Welcome to the Gospel Addict podcast. I'm Bryan.
And I'm Jim Reske.
We're gospel addicts because we believe the gospel of Jesus isn't just good news, it's the best news ever.
We're addicted to the gospel because it doesn't just start us out in the Christian life, it is the Christian life.
Join us as we look at the Bible through the lens of the gospel.
Thanks so much for listening.
You're listening to another episode of the Gospel Addict podcast. We believe the gospel of Jesus, not only who Jesus was, but what he did for us, is not just good news, but it's the best news ever. And so on this episode, Jim Reske and myself, I'm Bryan, we're going to discuss, we're doing what we call the AfterTalk, or at least I call it the AfterTalk. And if you've done any public speaking, you know that there's all the preparation that goes into the talk that you want to give. And then there's the actual talk you deliver, but there's a third talk, and that's the talk that you wish you would have delivered. And so we are going to be discussing that talk, which Jim just recently taught on Romans chapters 3-5. And Jim, I thought you did a fantastic job. Congratulations on that. But I'm guessing you have some thoughts for us about maybe some changes you would make.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And it's so great to be with you. Thanks for doing this. I do love the talk. Yeah, the after talk, the debrief, the wind down. I don't know what you call it, but it's good. You're right. It's good to kind of think about it. So I thought overall, kind of said what I wanted to say for the most part, but still some thoughts about things you omitted or things that weren't clear. Some things in the Q&A afterwards that I don't know if I responded to well, because you got to think on your feet. And I think I was missing some of that. So there are some thoughts and reflections. I'll start with one that kind of happened before the talk even started. I was getting set up. And first of all, I think I appreciate it. I was up there, I was nervous, and I think you came up and prayed for me. We just prayed together. I really appreciate that. As a friend, that was really comforting. That was just great. You know, it's I think we always got to remember when we do this, we're studying God's word. It's not a performance. It's just a Bible study. We're there to hear what God has to say and learn from him. So, but I do really appreciate that. But right before you came up and did that with me, I was hearing a couple guys in the background, and I don't know if they listened to the podcast or not, but a couple of guys got there early, and one was saying who's talking today? And it's Jim Reske. Oh yeah, he talks too fast.
Oh, and you overheard him say that?
Oh, I heard it. Well, there were almost nobody there at that time, so I couldn't but hear him. And at one point, I wanted to say, "Guys, I'm right here, and I can hear every word you're saying, and I don't like it." But I did. But I didn't say that, you know. So they were joking with each other. But he's one guy said he talks too fast, but I like him, and the other guy said, "But what's there to like if you can't understand him because he talks too fast?" So if anyone
it sounds like the Muppet Show where there's those two guys in the back in the balcony.
then I'm being unfair to them, or maybe that's a compliment to them. I don't know. I mean to thank them for coming in. I love everybody who comes, so I don't mean to be derogatory in any way. I think I'm taking it to heart because I heard that, and I think that's true. And listening to it again, because I reviewed the tape this morning. And if anyone is on the podcast following us sequentially, they will have just heard it in our last podcast. It's true. There's sometimes, especially at the beginning, I'm running over my own words. I'm just mumbling the words to get the thoughts out. And I don't know if I can slow it down. My brain just doesn't work that way. And I think if I try to slow down my speech to a reasonable pace, I will inevitably lose my train of
thought.
Right.
Yeah.
I won't be able to complete my own sentences.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think you speak too fast. And I think, but I mean, you speak fast, but you know, some people speak fast, some people speak slow. I mean, the only thing I would say is sometimes we don't know how much material to prepare.
Right.
When we do this.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I'm guessing one of the reasons you speak fast is you want to get through the material.
That's right. There's always that fear of I'm just not going to get to this.
Especially when people start raising their hands and interrupting us.
Yeah. And we
Uh,
welcome that. I mean, it's a Bible study. It's meant to be conversational. For those who don't know, there's like 50 people in the room. It's not a sit around the table with six guys and study the word kind of Bible study. It's 50 people come and one person takes the burden to prepare and really research it and speak, but then anyone can chime in anytime they want. And oftentimes, we talked about this before, sometimes some people go through the whole thing and there's no questions. Other times, you get 3 minutes in and like hands start going up. Sometimes if you cover things too quickly, they want it to comment. If you go too slow, they're like, I got something to say, and the hands go up. And there's no way to prepare for that amount of time. You just don't know. So
yeah, and you don't know from week to week whether this time when you talk, you're
right.
gonna have a lot of but you're right. We welcome, I said interruptions like it was a negative thing, but it is kind of part of it's part of the DNA of the Bible study, and we actually enjoy it.
Encourage it.
We want it to be interactive. At the same time, when you're teaching, you want to prepare adequately, and you prepare to fill the whole hour.
Well, you're right, and so we do welcome it. There were some thoughts I think in the that people brought up in the Q&A in the comments that were way better than mine. That were really good. Tim commented once on brought in Hebrews rest. That was fantastic, and others too that made some great comments. But I did find at one point the comment just threw off my whole train of thought, and I got completely lost. Thankfully, it's cut out of the podcast listener won't notice because the long pregnant pause silence where I was trying to gather my thoughts probably is cut out. But it just kind of throws you off. You think, wait, where am I? What's the next thought? But then again, it's not like
Yeah.
it's a performance. You just look at your notes and say, oh, that's right, and flip the
Yeah.
page and move on.
So the irony of what you just shared about, overhearing those guys um, making comments about your speaking style is the actual content that you were sharing was how human beings, we want to have this validating
Yeah,
performance record where we're constantly trying to build our validating performance record
right.
to impress others so that and so uh, I mean, do you find that ironic like I do?
Yeah, it's a little bit like we talked last time we did the talk about nothing a couple talks ago. Then people say, "Wow, that was great." You say, "Yeah, but the substance of the talk was about how we don't get any credit for good things we do. The disciples fed the 4,000; they don't. The 5,000; they don't get credit. It's all Jesus' credit. So how do you take credit when someone says, "Yeah, but your talk on how you don't get credit was really great"? You're like, "Oh yeah, but I don't get this." The very
Right.
substance says, "I don't get right." And in this way, the same thing. You say you're building your justification on maybe comments people say or compliments, and you feel like, if you feel like part of your validation is that you speak well, or and then people say, yeah, you're not so great, hotshot. You're not as you're not as great as you think you are. It's yeah, maybe that's a good validation of the thesis of the content of the talk. So
Yeah.
um, that was good.
So you heard that and that kind of threw you off a little bit. I didn't think I didn't it didn't come across to me. Um,
Yeah, just at the beginning, it is. You have to kind of. It's like all these talks. You get going, and then you kind of get in. You forget. I think the best times I've spoken is when you just forget yourself, and you're just so lost in the content.
yes.
Like I was so excited about some of these thoughts in here. The big thought of apart from the law, and that justification is not forgiveness, and this thing of the righteousness of God. That phrase how it comes up in Romans 1 verse 16 and 17, and again in 2 Corinthians 5:21. And I just love these. I was so excited about that. The judge analogy and the boat analogy, um, both of which I probably could have actually teased out even a little more than I did, and kind of expanded on a little more than I did. The idea in the boat analogy that we look at our that it starts with that idea that we can't, if we line up at the beach in LA to swim to Hawaii, nobody makes it. But we do kind of argue about, and we think
Who
about,
went the
well,
farthest?
that's right. Yeah, that's right. You went 100 yards and I went 10 yards and everybody drowns, right? But Jesus puts us on the boat. And I'd never heard that before. I kind of came up with that just to say, there I am proud of something, Greg. I work it in. I'm proud of my analogy.
I love the analogy though. It's great.
Well,
So
it helps.
keep going, keep
Well,
fleshing
it
it
help,
out.
yeah. So it helps me, like you say, I may be a great swimmer. You may be a better swimmer. That has nothing to do with how we're getting to Hawaii. We're both on this boat because he bought us a ticket. He paid for it, right? That's why we're here. So it's a nice ocean liner. It's got a pool. Go swim in the pool. It's great, but it's irrelevant. That thought that it's completely irrelevant to your safe passage to Hawaii, right? That's all purchased and paid for by him. Um, and then that because the whole analogy, the swim to Hawaii thing, is all about sense of scale. And at some point, someone brought up the idea about Joe did. We compare ourselves to others because that was part of the talk too. And I had a thought written down, but I didn't work. I forgot. I didn't work it in. But the thought is, yeah, sometimes we'll say, "Well, yeah. I know I'm not. It's all by grace." You say I'm a zero, but I feel like I'm better than those people. So I'm a six, and they're a two. So I'm at least three times as good as those people, right? So that idea of comparison. And I think another way, and I was addressing that by saying, yeah, but Paul's saying you're all zeros, which I think is what the gospel says. But another way of saying is, okay, you're a six, there are two. You don't understand. The scale doesn't go to 10. The scale goes to 10 trillion, right?
Mm.
And you're triple, fully triple. Yeah, maybe you are fine. You're triple the worth and the value, the merit, the righteousness of that other guy. But the scale goes to 10 trillion and you're six, right? So where are you? You're at the bottom of the ocean, to mix metaphors. You're still dead in your trespasses and sins. But if you really want to cling to your merit, they're fine. You got six. Way to go. Paul's saying it's zero. And so that's another way I was in my notes to think about it, but I didn't bring it up. Another way to kind of deal with that, because it introduces the concept of scale. And that Hawaii thing is all about scale, understanding scale in the gospel. So anyway, that was one thing. And I got a bunch of other things. They're not really in order. They're not in the order of the presentation. They're just random thoughts and things I left out or could have done better. So but that boat thing was one thing. I'll give you another. This one I left out. I'm kind of glad I left it out for the big groups. It's a little controversial. So some things I think of that, if, like, especially examples when I was talking about you think you're better than them. And we have examples where you say, well, I'm better than those people on the other end of the political spectrum, educational spectrum. Remember, I have those general ideas. And I had some specific examples, but and sometimes specific examples help because people don't, they'll hear a general example. They say, I still don't see how this applies to me until you give them something really specific. And then they say, now it hits home. But I had an example like from like liberal and conservative. When we did the pre-talk, I was talking about unions and management. And I
Yeah.
left that out because someone's going to latch onto one side of that and then you'll lose them. So probably good that I did. Another one, I forget if we did this in the pre-talk or not, but it's like a liberal conservative kind of one. We were did I tell you this? We were vacationing in New England not long ago, and a bunch of houses in this town we were in had this little banner in front, and the banner said, "In this house, we believe that." Did I tell you this?
No.
It's a little banner. It was a literal banner hanging on a post, like an unfurled banner, but really only about 2 feet by 2 feet. So it's kind of small, but they would put it in their front walkway. And I saw these all over town. And it would say, in this house, we believe that. And then it had every slogan. And this was all from one side of the political spectrum. This is on the left side. So it
Okay.
said, in this house, we believe that love is love. And we believe that Black Lives Matter. And you can see right away why I wouldn't want to bring this up in the Bible study, because immediately people start latching onto those and thinking about those and want to argue those specific points, right? Because and there was other things about global warming and immigration, and the banners were all the same. So all the houses had bought the banner from the same vendor, but they had and they were to say this is what we believe in. And when I saw these, I remember talking to my kids about it and reflecting on it, thinking, okay, so this house, you say this is what we believe in. That's fine. That's fine. You believe in those things. Okay, good for you. Why do you need to tell me you do? Why do you have a banner outside your house declaring what you believe in? Because you're declaring your righteousness. It's people call it now virtue signaling, right? But it's a
Yeah.
declaration of your righteousness. Now, I think I could have thought of examples on the conservative side, the way you fly your flag or your slogans you put on your, on your bumper sticker or whatever. I could have thought of something on a conservative side to balance it out, but I thought, you know what, it's not worth going there in the group because I think it'll just it's an example that'll spark that. I do think it's a good example though, because I think that example, left or right, conservative, liberal, or virtue signaling, is an example of justification and that universal drive for justification. It's not just that I believe in these things. I need to tell you I do. I need you to understand that I do. Right. And I need just to justify myself, to constantly justify myself.
Yeah.
So that was one I left out, but now I'm in hindsight, I'm actually kind of glad I left that out.
It's a good illustration though. I
Yeah.
think, I think I I get it. Um,
Yeah. So maybe I'll balance it. Here's another one I left out. Because talking about thinking you're better than those people. And there was one point I was trying to say, you don't understand. These people are awful. They're sinners. And I say, yes, they are sinners, but they're no more. I think in the talk I said, but they're no more of an abomination than I am. Um, uh, One thing I had in my notes, but I left out again, I don't want to put out there incendiary touchstones that people just want to latch onto, especially anything political. It's just not worth it. We're just there to learn about Jesus and the gospel and study the Bible. But the notion of like, say, well, yeah, these people are really awful. You think about, okay, what kind of people would Jesus have hung around with if he came back today? And someone else gave me this example and said, what if Jesus came back today? Here's a guy who comes back and says he's the Messiah, but all he does is hang out with transgender people in gay bars. There'd be so many religious people say, well, he can't possibly be the Messiah. If this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of sinner that woman is. I mean, that's what Simon said when the prostitute was washing Jesus with her hair, right? If he was the Messiah would never hang out with a sinner like her. He would be with righteous people like me. And that threw people for a loop the first time Jesus came. So the people now, we think, well, they're real sinners, they're unrighteous. What if Jesus came and just hang out with whoever it is in your group that you think are the unrighteous, the other ones?
right.
And that's who he's not hanging out with you. He's hanging out with them, for crying out loud. That's no Messiah. That ain't Jesus. Couldn't be. Right. I think about that because it's always so easy to be hard on the Pharisees that they missed it. But if Jesus was doing that, whoever is you or me or whoever you think is undesirable or opposite of you, that you're defining yourself, because I'm not one of those people. And Jesus hanging out with those people, right?
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
So, but again, probably for the general group, for the podcast, hey, let's see if someone actually writes in or responds. But for the general group I don't like any of that. The examples of the two liberal conservative examples tend, I think, just it's not worth it. Creates arguments and it's not worth it.
Yeah, I was wondering, could you make it silly? Could you make it like you have this group of people that they love dogs and they hate cats? And then you have the people that love cats and they hate dogs.
They're hanging out with cat people. That's ridiculous. Yeah, that's a good one. That's good. I like that.
Sometimes if you just kind of make it absurd,
right. Right. Hawaiian shirts, and everywhere Hawaiian shirts. And there's Jesus, that guy that he calls him claims to be the Messiah is wearing a Hawaiian shirt or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's good.
There's dog people, there's cat people, there's people, but it's human nature. We're constantly comparing ourselves.
Yeah. And did I ever tell you, I hate to tell, I do this a lot. I'll tell you back a story that actually got from you. So maybe you're the one who told me this, Greg. I do that all the time. Tell a story. I'm like, the other person says, Jim, I'm the one, you idiot. I'm the one who told you that story. About Psych 101 students and Jesus. Have you heard this?
Okay. I don't think that came from me.
Okay. All right. Just to be safe. If it did, then all the better. But it's a survey they did. They say, write down, all the characteristics. I don't know if they do which one they do first, but they'll say, write down all these. Here's a little survey. Take out a survey and write down like all of your characteristics. Who do you think you are? and they I'm extrovert, introvert, whatever it is, and then it's like a personality scale or survey. And then a couple weeks later, they say, here's a survey. Take this as if Jesus were taking it. What do you think how would Jesus Christ answer these questions? And lo and behold, exactly what you think. Everybody thinks Jesus is exactly like them, right? Whatever personality trait, profile I've got. Hey, turns out my Jesus is exactly the same way. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Gospel Addict Podcast. Feel free to contact us via email at gospeladdictpodcast@gmail.com.
Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, on your worst days, you're never beyond the reach of God's grace, and on your best days, you're never beyond the need of God's grace.
See you next time.